According to the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza, at least 41 people have been killed, over 2,000 people have been injured, and the Health Ministry has actually called on Egypt for medical supplies. They don't have enough medical supplies. Let's go now to the United States, where we're joined by Dr. Maher Massis, the Vice President of the Coalition of Palestinian American Organizations. Dr. Massis, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. I presume you just saw the speeches at the dedication ceremony, and you're also seeing the images coming in from Gaza, where at least 41 people have been killed. What are your thoughts on this day?
Well, I think the move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem isn't really the problem per se. It's the context under which it was made. And that is that there is injustice. The Palestinians still do not have freedom, and East Jerusalem is still not the capital of the Palestinian people. Moreover, it was done by a president who has some serious moral character flaws. He didn't do this for a moral reason. He did this to appease an extremist political faction within his party. The ideal situation would have been where both sides recognize each other's capital in East Jerusalem, and the embassy would then be transferred to West Jerusalem, and also another U.S. embassy transferred to East Jerusalem. I think you would find all the world leaders coming to the ceremony and celebrating such a great accomplishment. But from the Palestinian point of view, nothing is going to change. They're not going to go away. They will continue to pursue a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Palestine.
All right, Dr. Maher Massis, stay with us. We're now going to go to our Middle East correspondent, Emily Rose, who's outside the Damascus Gate in the Old City. Emily, we know while there are protests on the Gaza border, there have also been violent outbreaks at the Kalandia checkpoint in the West Bank. What's happening where you are there?
Yes, we're just here with Ahmed Tibi. He's going to tell us a little bit about who is here at this protest today.
We are demonstrating against the move, against the statement of President Trump, against the total adaptation of the occupation narrative about East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is occupied. It's Palestinian. It should be the capital of the independent Palestinian state. He is killing the vision of two-state solution, which becoming two-state illusion. We are saying no to this move, and we are saying no to the massacre in Gaza, where snipers are shooting unarmed demonstrators. International community should hear this voice loudly. No for the massacre, no for this move.
Mr. Ahmed Tibi, what do you think Jerusalem residents, Arab Jerusalem residents, are feeling on this day? And what do you think they're going to do moving forward to the Nakba and tomorrow and then coming weeks?
They are feeling attacked and oppressed, that their rights, national rights, are being taken by President Trump, but Jerusalem was Palestinian and Arab, Al-Quds. It will stay even after Trump will leave, and he will leave.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As you can see behind me, these are Arab Jerusalem residents who are protesting this move. So that just shows you the contrast. On one side of this city, joy and jubilation, but here, certainly not joy, anger and rage. We've seen protesters here clash with local Jewish protesters here. On this side, just behind me, is a group of the Neturei Karta. Those are a very, very firebrand Jewish extremist fringe group that are protesting the protesters who have come here today. So certainly a very multi-layered picture, and you can see the commotion is just growing and growing throughout the day.
Thank you very much, Emily. Mike Wagenheim, let's talk a little more about the ceremony that we just saw, the dedication ceremony. It seemed, there were a lot of religious elements to it. We had rabbis, we had priests, and we had two very famous evangelics speaking at this ceremony, pretty much showing that this is, this ceremony is being televised, of course, in the States, and this is for Donald Trump's base, isn't it?
Without a doubt, it's for Donald Trump's base, and there are those two pastors did have some controversial comments in their particular histories. Pastor Jeffress was highly criticized for inflammatory comments about Jews, Muslims, and LDS members as well, Latter-day Saints. In fact, Mitt Romney criticized his appearance earlier today. Meanwhile, Pastor John Hagee, at the end of the ceremony, the one from San Antonio from the Cornerstone Baptist Church, has largely been forgiven by the Jewish community for long ago comments about God having caused the Holocaust in order for the exiles to return to Israel. And he did, of course, mention, as any part of the Jewish story mentions, the ingathering of the exiles into Israel, as he did in the ceremony today. So both of those pastors have controversial past, but as so happens with the Jewish evangelical community, it seems in the end, most, if not all, is forgiven in the long run. I want to give some context to what we just saw a few moments ago on screen. Ahmed Tibi, who we heard from, is actually a member of the Israeli parliament from the Joint Arab List, one of the firebrand members of parliament, who gave some comments today about what's happening. And Emily also mentioned the Nutre Karta group, which she mentioned is a Jewish group, but they are an anti-Zionist group that has been protesting.
They're basically with the demonstrators.
They're with the demonstrators, not against the demonstrators, and are an anti-Zionist group through and through.
Right.
Now, Mark, we have to go up for a break, so I just want to ask you briefly. We heard from the Israeli Prime Minister in his address calling Jerusalem the eternal undivided capital of Jerusalem. To your mind, is that the way that Donald Trump expects it to play out, saying that Jerusalem is off the table, but then says, you know, he hasn't decided any final status issues?
To quote Donald Trump, whatever is acceptable by both sides is acceptable by him. I'm not sure he has any idea what he really wants. He would just like to have an agreement, the perfect agreement. So,
is there anything, though, that can bring the Palestinians back to the table, that this administration can do to bring them back?
Look, eventually they're going to have to come back. They're living in La La Land. I said this on the air when they first started saying they weren't going to negotiate anymore with the Americans. They can talk about it all they want. The only people who can negotiate and bring about any sort of agreement are the Americans. There is no one else who can do it. So they can keep on saying they'll never talk to the Americans, they'll never talk to the Americans. Eventually, they'll talk to the Americans because there's no other choice. Or we can just continue the way we are forever, which is not good for anybody, obviously.
Very briefly, we're going out for a quick break, but just give our viewers a bit of a context as to the actual building that this embassy now stands on.
It's not very flashy at all. It's a consulate building, and it's a very plain-looking facility. There weren't really many changes that were made. Just a few offices have been constructed and an access road. In the coming months, more offices will be constructed, but it's going to look very different down the road when a new embassy is built. And when Donald Trump talks about $400,000 that he spent and brags about the budget, that was just for a few offices. It's still going to cost a huge amount of money to build a new embassy. So those accounting figures are a bit shady.
We'll talk about what is inside of that embassy and what is going on outside of it in terms of the broader context after the break. Don't go anywhere.
There's more to the news than meets the eye. Many voices, many faces, with interests often at odds. We take you deeper beyond the headlines, inside the drama, the controversy, bringing you fresh insights into the conflict, breakthroughs, heartaches, and victories shaping our world. Perspectives. There's more than just one view.
I'm Michelle McCory on I-24 News. Join me on Clear Cut, where we cut to the chase with a straightforward yet insightful breakdown of the world's top political and economic stories.
Weeknights beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on I-24 News.
That was Hagit Yasso performing at the official dedication ceremony of the new U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. Very well done there by Hagit Yasso. Let's take a look also at what President Donald Trump said in his video message to the people at the ceremony. Let's take a look.
The United States remains fully committed to facilitating a lasting peace agreement, and we continue to support the status quo at Jerusalem's holy sites, including at the Temple Mount, also known as Haram al-Sharif. This city and its entire nation is a testament to the unbreakable spirit of the Jewish people. The United States will always be a great friend of Israel and a partner in the cause of freedom and peace.
Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his part, of course, saying there is no better friend to Israel than the United States. Let's take a quick listen to what he had to say just moments ago.
Dear friends, what a glorious day. Remember this moment. Thank you, President Trump, for having the courage to keep your promises.
And let's go to the embassy where our diplomatic correspondent Ellie Hochenberg is. Ellie.
Yes, Tracy, this is it. The ceremony is over. The guests are heading out now as we speak. And to try and summarize what we've had here in the past 90 minutes or so, I'm now, luckily for me, joined by Mr. David Makovsky, Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute. Sir, thank you very much for your time. So what stood up for you from the different speeches we've heard?
Delighted to be with you. And this is a historic day. I think in many ways it's the sense of the crowd was that a kind of historic injustice has been corrected, that the U.S. has functionally dealt with Jerusalem as Israel's capital since 1949. I think it was important that President Trump in his video remarks talked about the holy sites and having status quo at the holy sites. Even referred to the Temple Mount both by its name in English and Arabic. And I think that was trying to signal that a call for calm. Trump in his December proclamation said it's up to the parties to decide the boundaries of the city. Whatever is good for them is good for me. And I think that was good. The crowd clearly warmed to the close friendship between the two countries, and clearly President Trump got a lot of shout-outs here, and Prime Minister Netanyahu kind of also shined a spotlight on that as well.
Well, Jared, in Jared Kushner's speech, he too related to the peace process, expressing the desire of the administration to pursue the peace path, but also address the issue of the violence we're seeing even today, condemning it. What was your take on that?
Well, I think it's clear, we don't know all the details yet in Gaza, and it's tragic to hear these numbers. Clearly, if people use violence to break through a barrier, that they're going to be met with force. But the loss of every life is a tragedy, and I did hope there would have been more talk about outreach, although Jared Kushner represents the U.S. peace team plan. We're waiting for that still to come forward. We don't know when that will. Is it going to be after Ramadan, which is about to begin after a couple days after Nakba Day tomorrow? We still have some rough, tomorrow's going to be a rough day too. So it's too hard to know. Look, I think the message should be from here. It should be that if the parties would agree even that the Palestinians would even have 100% of East Jerusalem, still the bulk of the city will be Israel's capital. And therefore, wherever you are on the left-right spectrum, I think you should, see this as correcting this, injustice from 1949. But it's clearly the Palestinians are not going to feel that sense of joy or outreach, and they will see it as their expense, which I think is sad.
One election promise is already done. Maybe the second one will be too. Mr. Makovsky, thank you very much for your insight. Thank you very much. Tracy, back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Let's go back to Washington, D.C., where we're still joined by Dr. Maher Massis, the Vice President of the Coalition of Palestinian American Organizations. Dr. Massis, let's talk about the Palestinians in Gaza who are storming the fence today. Is this the right way for them to push their agenda, to just attack that fence?
Well, I think it's an example of frustration. They need to express their frustration, and what are they supposed to do? The Israeli army, the snipers are shooting civilians, they're going to continue to express their frustration, and they are expressing a desperate voice to the world that please do not forget about us. And this is one way of showing that.
All right, Dr. Massis, of course, we heard a senior advisor to US President Trump at that ceremony make an address. He said the history will remember that the journey to peace began with the US recognising the truth. Now, of course, in order to reach peace, you need peace partners. We're not hearing very positive things coming out of the Palestinian Authority in terms of the future of Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. What's your take?
Well, of course not. Of course not. I mean, what's there to talk about if Trump keeps saying that this is an example of how we can start the peace process? This is not a good way to transfer the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So there's really nothing to talk about at this point. The whole world knows what a real peace would be between Palestine and Israel, and that is the West Bank, East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, and some agreement on what to do with the Jewish settlements and their refugee status. If the Trump administration has a proposal that addresses these fundamental issues of concern to the Palestinians, then let him present the proposal. He has been talking about this for months and months, the grand peace scheme. Well, let's see it. Let's see it. And then I think once we see what's actually being presented, President Abbas will respond accordingly.
All right, Dr. Maher Massis.